It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
These are the final seconds.
The lead in the fourth. Can they hold on to it?
That do or die time. And everything rides on one shot. But it isn't going to be that easy.
And it's a one-point game.
This is down to the wire.
They're going to try the three-point attempt.
One shot to take you to the top. One winner. This is clutch basketball. That's the NBA playoffs. That's game.
Slides it out for Ekblad. Back to Hoffman. Blocked by Polak and Price. Another spectacular stop. Broussard tees it up, and a save is made by Bobrovsky. Nelson. Barzell with the open net, and he scores!
Hi, and welcome to the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gil Martin. I'm an Islanders columnist and historian, and I wrote the book Ice Wars, which covers the complete history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. All right, everybody, welcome to the weekend edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast. So glad you could join us here on this Friday as we talk all things Islanders hockey, and we wrap up the week by taking a look at which forwards the Islanders are likely to protect in the upcoming expansion draft. Plus, we review the season of Thomas Hickey and his possible future with the New York Islanders as we continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders from the 2020-2021 season. And we also have our Islanders birthday of the day, a very popular player from the 70s into the early 80s who won a Stanley Cup with the New York Islanders, has his birthday this weekend. All that and more coming up on today's show. This episode is brought to you by Spotify Green Room. Download the app and join me this Wednesday and every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time to get in on the action. If you've got something Islanders related on your mind, you have a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like us to talk about, feel free to send us an email at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we talk about whatever it is that you suggest. You can also follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnIsles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on Twitter at IceWarsNYRVSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings throughout the off-season, from the expansion draft to the NHL entry draft to free agency and all the way to training camp. So we're going to start off with a discussion of Thomas Hickey. He is the player we're focusing in on today. And, you know, I have felt badly for Thomas Hickey, because he is a player who is, quite honestly, good enough to have played on the Islanders the last couple of years. And the fact of the matter is, his high salary made him, the Islanders kind of had no choice because of the cap constraints to send him to the AHL. He went through some injury issues. He went through some family issues off the ice and ended up spending all of 2019-2020 in the minors. It was a difficult situation. It certainly did not help Hickey's career. Now, this year with the Islanders, Hickey played in 5 games. And it was, great to see him back on the ice playing for the Islanders and back in the NHL. It is certainly something that, in a lot of ways was long overdue. And in his first game back, which was against the Flyers back on March 20th, he had 2 assists and was a +2. And again, had a block shot, 1 hit, one shot on goal. He clearly contributed to the team's success in that game. Ends up through 5 games. Those were his only 2 points, the 2 assists he had in that game against the Flyers. He was a +5 in those 5 games, was never a minus, and, ended up with 10 hits in 5 games, 3 block shots. Really, showed that he is still at least capable of being out there on the ice and playing at the NHL level. Now, Thomas Hickey is an unrestricted free agent this summer. And clearly, if he's going to continue to earn the same salary that he's been earning, I believe his cap hit is somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 million a year, the Islanders are not going to try to re-sign him for that kind of money. We still don't know if the Islanders will lose a defenseman in the expansion draft. If Nick Leddy departs, bringing back Thomas Hickey at a deal closer to maybe $1 million, $1.5 million at most, might make sense for the Islanders. The question is, does it make sense for Thomas Hickey? Hickey is, 32 years old. He'll be 33 during the upcoming season. And, size was never his thing. He's 6 foot, 186 pounds officially. Not the most, physical defenseman, but certainly willing. Can contribute offensively, is, average to slightly above average, maybe in his own zone. He can be a useful third pair defenseman, and certainly, if he's your 7th defenseman, that's not a bad thing also. What is the market for Thomas Hickey this offseason? He probably could be had for not a lot of money. Someone will pay him $1.5 million, maybe $2 million tops, and, that might be more than the Islanders are willing to offer him, but, what is the market, basically, for a 32-year-old defenseman who has played a grand total of 5 NHL games in the last 2 years? Now, in the past, Hickey has scored some important clutch goals for the Islanders, and, he tends to come up big in big game situations. I remember some of the things he accomplished in the Stanley Cup playoffs during his career with the Islanders that, reminds you that Thomas Hickey is capable of making some very solid contributions. I go back to the Florida series in 2016 where, he scored the game-winning goal in that playoff series that helped the Islanders eventually win the series. Had a couple of assists in, game 5 of that series that eventually the Islanders win in 6 games. So, Hickey is certainly capable of contributing to the team's success. The question becomes whether or not the Islanders want him back. I don't think Thomas Hickey is a high priority for Lou Lamoriello. But if he's willing to come back at or around the veteran minimum, he can be a useful depth piece. And if Nick Leddy goes, you want a guy who can contribute offensively. Maybe, it's a choice between Hickey and Sebastian Aho. Yeah, maybe you bring back Hickey. Do I think he's a part of this team's long-term plans? No. If I were a betting man, do I think Thomas Hickey is back with the Islanders next year? Probably not. But I do think that Hickey can still be a useful NHL defenseman, third pair or 7th defenseman somewhere. And, I hope personally, because he is a good guy and a good player, that he'll at least get that opportunity down the line. All right, we've got more to discuss. We're going to go over the Islanders' prospects for, who are they likely to protect in the expansion draft? That is a big question at forward. We discussed defensemen earlier this week. We also have our Islanders birthday of the day and a whole lot more still to come on the Locked On Islanders podcast.
Yeah, you're making sports bets, but are you making winning sports bets? To win consistently, you need an edge, research, analytics. It's a lot. Or you could let BetQL do the work for you. Every game, every potential bet, from winners and losers to all the sides and totals, line movement, player props, and more. All backed by BetQL's proven data and analytics. BetQL analyzes over 350,000 unique bets every year and rates each potential bet on a scale of 1 to 5 stars. A 5-star is definitely a smart bet. 1 star, smart money is staying away. BetQL even lets you sort all of today's games with the best options listed right there at the top of your screen. BetQL gives you access to the same information the pros use. The stuff the sportsbooks don't want you to see. It's time to bet smarter and beat the books with BetQL. Visit BetQL.com today and use promo code PODCAST for 20% off. That's 20% off with promo code PODCAST at BetQL.com.
This episode is brought to you by HP Plus. In a world full of smart devices, shouldn't your printer be smart too? It is with HP Plus. These printers know when they're running low, so you always get the ink you need delivered right when you need it. Plus, you save up to 50% on ink, so you can print whatever you want, as much as you want, anytime you want. Huh, that is pretty smart. Get 6 free months of instant ink when you choose HP Plus. Conditions apply. Visit hp.com/smart for details.
So let's take a look at the forward situation. The way the expansion draft breaks down, you expect that the Islanders will protect, 3 defensemen, 1 goalie, and 7 forwards. That is the typical approach that most teams have. And look, we know Oliver Wahlstrom, for example, is exempt. They don't have to even bother to protect him. They can't lose him in the expansion draft. He hasn't played enough games to be in that situation. So, you look at the roster. If you go alphabetically, you figure they protect Josh Bailey, Matthew Barzal, Anthony Beauvillier, Anders Lee, Brock Nelson, J.G. Pageau. The 7th guy who I think they're most likely to protect under the circumstances is Jordan Eberle. But if you don't want to protect Eberle because of his high contract, you figure he's a little older, maybe they won't, try to go after him. He wouldn't be attractive necessarily to a team like the Kraken. Well, what about Kiefer Bellows? Maybe you want to keep Kiefer Bellows protected because you don't want to necessarily risk losing him. And, we've heard Lou Lamoriello say, hey, we're very thankful that we still have Kiefer Bellows. And, it's possible you don't want to lose Bellows. So maybe they try to protect him and take a chance that the salary and age of Jordan Eberle will discourage people from wanting to pick him, that they might go for Nick Leddy, or again, as we've said, it's always possible that Lou Lamoriello works out a trade and they stay away from certain players or they pick a certain player and, hopefully that helps. But it's a difficult set of circumstances for the Islanders to try to make that decision. Because look, if the 7 guys that you protect are Bailey, Barzal, Beauvillier, Eberle, Lee, Nelson, and Pageau, we know Casey Cizikas is an unrestricted free agent. You're leaving Cal Clutterbuck and Matt Martin open to possible selection. You don't have to protect Oliver Wahlstrom. You're leaving Kiefer Bellows open if you protect Jordan Eberle, or you're leaving Jordan Eberle open if you protect Kiefer Bellows. These are the tougher decisions, and obviously you don't want to lose the identity line. You don't want to lose Clutterbuck. You don't want to lose Matt Martin. And either one of those guys, even if they're not eager to go, I could totally see the Kraken benefiting by saying, you know what, Cal Clutterbuck, veteran guy, fourth line guy, he's our first captain, or he's one of our alternate captains. And we're going to have a pretty young team in Seattle, but here's a guy who can help us, who can lead, who can, show our guys how to win by example, and, be almost like having an extra assistant coach on the bench and on the ice. So, there are a lot of possibilities out there. And, the Islanders, this is a tough call for Lou Lamoriello, no matter how you slice it, because you want to keep the core of this team together, and you can't protect everyone. Now, the good news is you can only lose one player. So, you can't lose Wahlstrom. You can't lose Ilya Sorokin. He's exempt. You can lose, one player. And I still have this gut feeling, just in my gut, that says that Lou Lamoriello is going to work out a deal with the Kraken and Ron Francis and make sure that they either don't take certain players or maybe, trade a pick or trade a player so that they do pick Andrew Ladd or, a player who really the Islanders wouldn't mind losing as much or who could give them some cap relief. So it's a tough one, but you got to figure that the entire B&B line is going to be protected. Bailey, Beauvillier, and Nelson, they're all protected. You got to protect your captain, Anders Lee. You got to protect your best forward offensively, Matthew Barzal. And then it comes down to, Pajot, you're not going to let him go. They would gobble up J.G. Pajot in a heartbeat if they left him unprotected. And Barry Trotz loves J.G. Pajot. He is maybe the ideal, third line center for a Barry Trotz kind of a team. So I would protect Eberle over Bellows. But to me, you make some kind of a deal and you make sure that you don't lose the players you really want to keep on this roster. And if it means giving up a third or fourth round pick or giving up, a fringe player or even a middle level prospect, then you go out there, you make a trade, give up that, fourth round pick, or you give up a Timashov kind of a player who, may or may not be in the team's plans long term. And that's the kind of deal you make. But it's not an easy decision. Only being able to protect 7 forwards is a challenge. But hey, in Lou we trust, right? I mean, that's what Islander fans always say. And Lou Lamoriello will figure this out. I mean, he's not in the Hall of Fame for nothing. And I believe deep in my gut that there will be some kind of a deal, formal or informal, that will allow the Islanders to keep the very important core of this team together. Now, just to let everybody know that on Monday, we will be joined by Erica Ayala. She is the host of the new podcast, Locked on Kraken, and she's going to give us sort of a different perspective on the expansion draft. And from a Kraken perspective, look over the Islanders roster and discuss who she feels the team may be interested in, adding to their roster in the expansion draft. So we're going to give you that added perspective on Monday. Make sure you join us for that. We've got a lot more to get to right here on today's episode of the Locked On Islanders podcast. When we come back, our Islanders birthday of the day, one of the most popular players in the first decade of the Islanders history. And one of the all-time nice guys in hockey as well. We have that and a lot more still to come right here on the Locked On Islanders podcast. Islanders fans, today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. It is the best tasting protein bar ever, and right now we're excited to talk about a limited time flavor, Built Grasshopper Cookie. It is available this week only, available until today, July 9th, and you can get this new Built Bar flavor Grasshopper Cookie. What does it taste like? Well, this is Built Bar's version of the classic thin mint cookie. All the flavor without all that sugar. It's got only 150 calories. It's got 17 grams of protein in every bar and just 5 grams of sugar. And if that's not your cup of tea, you can choose from the 9 permanent flavors like double chocolate, strawberry, German chocolate, mint brownie, or my personal favorite, cookies and cream. And if you haven't tried all the flavors, you can order a mixed box where you'll get 2 of each of the 9 permanent flavors. So that is always an option. Go to Built.com right now and use the promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com.
This episode is brought to you by Philips One by Sonicare. One up your brushing with Philips One. This one is the ideal one for those who are still using an old-school manual toothbrush. To all those people, it's time to take your brushing one level up. The solution is a simple one. It's the perfect timing one. It's the long-lasting battery-powered or USB rechargeable one. The comes in multiple colors to match you one. The one with a subscription that delivers new brush heads for just $5. Your teeth deserve this one. Philips One by Sonicare. One up your brushing. Learn more at philips.com/one. That's PHILIPS.com/ONE.
Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day, and this is one of my favorite Islanders, and I know he was one of the most popular players on the team during his tenure with the Islanders, which started back in 1973-74 and lasted through the middle of the 1980-81 season. I'm talking about goaltender Glenn Chico Resch, who will be turning 73 years old on Saturday. So a very happy 73rd birthday to Chico Resch. Chico was only 5'9", 165 pounds, and he was sort of a Cinderella story. Joining the Islanders, wasn't drafted, and in 74-75, which was really his first full season with the Islanders, he became quickly one of those players. He and Billy Smith combined to make one of the best goaltending tandems in the NHL. And Chico was acrobatic, he was quick reflexed, and he came up big during that 1975 playoff run. He had played in 12 games, and remember, the team played 17 games. Chico played in 12 of them in that playoff run where they went all the way to the semifinals. He had a big shutout in Game 7 against the Penguins, where the Islanders completed, they were down 3-0 in that series, completed a 4-game comeback, only the second team in NHL history to win a 7-game series after trailing 3-0. And in Game 7 in Pittsburgh, Chico Resch with a 1-0 shutout. Ed Westfall had the only goal. Chico had a 2.07 goals against average and 7 shutouts, which at the time were both Islander records. That was in 1975-76. And, people wonder where he got his nickname. His real name is Glenn Resch. Chico got his nickname because he looked like Freddie Prinze Sr., who was the star of the hit TV show Chico and the Man back in the 1970s, and that's where Glenn Chico Resch got his nickname. We're going to go back and look at one of Chico's better games with the Islanders, a playoff game no less, April 20th, 1979, at Chicago Stadium in Chicago. Game 3 of the Islanders' quarterfinal series with the Blackhawks, and the Islanders held a 2-0 series lead at that point. Chico Resch in goal for the Islanders. Hall of Famer Tony Esposito is the goalie for Chicago. And in the first period, the Islanders get on the board first. Billy Harris gets his first of the playoffs from Dennis Potvin and Mike Bossy. That was a power play goal at 18:08 with Pat Ribble in the box for roughing. That gave the Islanders the power play. In the second period, the Islanders extend their lead. Lorne Henning gets his first of the playoffs. Ed Westfall and Dennis Potvin with the helpers at 17:47, and after 2 periods, the Islanders led 2-0. In the third, the Islanders did not stop. Clark Gillies, his first of the playoffs. Ed Westfall and Jerry Hart with the helpers at 3 minutes in even, and then Dennis Potvin got his second of the playoffs. John Tonelli, the only assist at 11:25. Final score in this one, 4-0 Islanders. And for Chico Resch, he made 21 saves to earn the shutout and put the Islanders ahead in the series 3-0. Now, you want to get an idea of how different times are now? In the playoffs, in the first period of this game, there was a fight. Harold Filipoff was the player involved for the Blackhawks. Brian Trottier took a 5-minute fighting major for the Islanders. You would almost never see, Matt Barzal take a 5-minute fighting major today in a playoff game in the NHL. It could happen, but very, very unlikely, and yet Trotz dropped the gloves in that game against Harold Filipoff. So Chico Resch, very, very popular. The Islanders traded him to the Colorado Rockies midway through the 80-81 season. He was a part of the Stanley Cup team in 1980. And then in 80-81, when the Islanders went on their 15-game winning streak, the record-breaking win came against Colorado, and who was the goalie for the Rockies? Chico Resch. The Rockies, of course, moved to New Jersey, became the Devils. He played there for 4 seasons before finishing up in Philadelphia, and a lot of younger fans probably remember Chico Resch's time on television and on radio doing color commentary for New Jersey Devils games. I have had the privilege of talking to Chico a number of times, one of the great guys in this game and a great storyteller. Always a great time if you get to talk hockey with Chico Resch. So we wish him a very happy 73rd birthday and many, many healthy and happy more. Chico, a native of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, which, as Clark Gillies once said, is located 6 feet away from the Moose's behind. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Islanders podcast. Again, we will be back on Monday with a new show, and Erica Ayala will join us from Locked On Kraken to discuss the Kraken's view of who they might take from the Islanders in the expansion draft. We'll also continue our look at different Islanders players. We will look at J.G. Pageau on Monday, so that'll be our next Islander player to examine. Until then, have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.